Welcome back. This is the second edition of Sports with Hunzi. Please remember to like, comment, subscribe, repost. If you see this on Instagram, if you see this on YouTube, share it with your friends. Do me a favor, make sure that everybody in the world can see it, just so that maybe one day I could get paid for doing this. The Jalen Hurts discussion and QB ranking has come up a couple times inside my friend group, on social media, mainly Twitter, and I've thought a lot about it. The discourse and narrative is getting close to being off the rails. I think we've all, and I say we, the definition of quarterback rankings includes winning too much into the actual ranking. Yes, winning is a part of it. However, the people who are doing quarterback rankings on big television, I'm not so sure that they always understand what's going on in the football world. I don't think they understand the schematics or potentially what quarterbacks are being asked to do and how much of a difference it makes. So really just two questions or 2 points that I want to bring up about Jalen. I think we can rate him individually as a quarterback and rank him both fairly and accordingly without overrating him and without underrating him. What we have seen from Jalen is a very competent quarterback. He is capable of doing exactly what the Eagles have asked him to do. He doesn't turn the ball over. If he does, it's a high risk, high reward situation. He's a good runner. He's patient, and the mistakes that he does make are not as bad as they used to be. Jalen also has tremendous leadership, and I would argue that if it was any other quarterback in Philadelphia right now, I don't know that they would have the personality to manage the rest of the personalities on that team. With that being said, I truly think that there are 3 types of quarterbacks in the NFL. Ones that you win because of, ones that you can win with, and ones that you can't really win at all with. Jalen's in that tier 2. That's quarterbacks like Dak and Jared Goff, Baker Mayfield, Jordan Love, Tua, Trevor Lawrence, CJ Stroud, Justin Herbert. There's a good amount of guys in there who have proven that they can win a playoff game, or you can at least win with them. There's only 4 quarterbacks in the NFL that you can win because of, at least in my belief. Joe Burrow, Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, and Lamar. What people have tried to do is, I think, put Jalen in that first tier. And I don't think that's fair to what we as fans have seen from him. What we have seen from him is what I talked about earlier. And the reason I don't think he is in that first tier and why I think the discourse needs to be put back on the rails is what we haven't seen from Jalen Hurts is more telling than what we have seen. The surroundings that Jalen has had has been set up for him to succeed. And while that isn't a diminishment on his own value, it doesn't allow us as fans or people who are looking at quarterbacks intently to see what he is capable of without so many shining stars around him. I'm not sure that what we haven't seen from Jalen is him elevating his teammates. And once again, I want to make sure that I'm not diminishing him. I'm just pointing out that with A.J. Brown and Saquon Barkley and Devontae Smith and that offensive line, it's really hard to decipher which star is shining brightest on that offense. They all feed off of each other, and that's why they won the Super Bowl. That's a lot of the reason that they are as good as they are. They've only lost 3 games last year. But to put Jalen in that top tier conversation, I think you would have to say that he's elevating his teammates, similar to the way that we do about Josh and Lamar and Joe and Patrick. Just last week, ESPN released a video where they ranked all of the positional skill groups each team had, 1 through 32. Just on the offensive side of the ball, the Eagles' running back room was ranked third overall, third out of 32. Their wide receiver room was ranked second, and their offensive line was ranked first. With so many stars shining on that offense, it's really hard to see if Jalen's star is burning as bright as those top 4 quarterbacks. It doesn't mean that he's not doing his job. In fact, it means he's doing his job very well and is keeping up with the pace. However, in order to put him in that first tier or rank him in the top 5 to 8 quarterbacks, that's the precipice of being able to be a quarterback in the NFL that your team wins because of. And we haven't been able to see that. I don't know that we will, considering the way that the team's constructed and just how talented that offensive unit is. I'll relate it to the last 2 MVPs, Lamar and Josh. Part of the reason I think they won MVP is because of the lack of stardom on their team and just how bright they shine when there's not a lot of stars around them. Josh, in particular last year, I think the whole reason he won MVP was because Stephon wasn't there anymore. You saw that he had 4 sheets of paper as wide receivers. Although Lamar had a much better year statistically, I think people valued the fact that Josh stood out with a less than ideal set of wide receivers. And that's not to say Lamar had good receivers. I would say that the Bills' wide receiver core was not as good as Baltimore's. But that's all to say MVPs and those top 4 quarterbacks, or 4 to 5 quarterbacks, shine brightest because there's not a lot of talent around them all the time. It's much easier to see who is shining the brightest when there's not a whole lot of talent surrounding them. And we've seen that with the other 4 quarterbacks. Yeah, Joe Burrow's had T. Higgins and Jamar Chase, but that offensive line has been atrocious at points of times. The wide receiving core has been terrible in both Buffalo and in Baltimore and even in Kansas City. That leads me to my next point. In order for him, meaning Jalen, to be put into that top tier quarterback, personally, I'd like to see how he does when he's trailing and when the offensive game plan needs him to put the ball in harm's way to create points and elevate his team to a win. He doesn't have those opportunities very often. And that's not a slight against Jalen. It's just the reality that because they are winning so many games early and are able to run the ball, the necessity for them to throw the ball in the second half isn't there. They're winning. They're not trailing. That offensive line is so good that their run game is so good, and the necessity to pass is very limited. When that happens, it creates a void or a lack of necessity for Jalen to be the best sort of quarterback that fans and the media have become accustomed to seeing from Patrick and Joe Burrow and Josh and Lamar. They have to pull off the heroics because they're behind and or it's necessary, that they have to rise to the occasion. Jalen hasn't had that opportunity very much, and that's where he That's where the problem in the discourse becomes, which is I think it's okay not to elevate him to that status without diminishing him as a quarterback. What he has around him is hurting his chances of being considered a top-tier quarterback. I don't think that's a slight against him. I truly believe it's a blessing for him as a quarterback and as a human being that he won't have to do those sorts of things because of the way that the team is constructed. I do believe that with the tiers and with the evaluation of what he's being asked to do with his own surroundings, we can evaluate his talent and what he does on the football field fairly without underrating him and overrating him. And I hope that in the future, people understand that until, and God forbid, anybody gets hurt and or the situation in Philly changes, I'm not sure that we'll ever be able to accurately predict or accurately evaluate Jalen on a 1 through 20 list. It'll be much easier to evaluate him when it comes to whether you can win because of him or whether you can win with him. And for right now, and for the foreseeable future, I think it's simply just you can win with him. And that's all that matters. And that's a good thing. Please remember to like and subscribe and leave feedback. Thank you for watching. I appreciate it. Remember to repost on Instagram, YouTube, all those sorts of things. Leave hate comments, whatever you guys got to do. Hopefully I get paid for this one day. And hopefully all that made sense.